Stephenie Rodriguez is a digital entrepreneur, TEDx speaker, and one of Women in Tech's Top 100 of 2024. She's a global change maker on a mission to impact 1 billion lives through her work with the UN Sustainable Development Goals and the globalfund.org. A bilateral amputee and para-athlete, Stephenie's story of surviving a near-death experience and choosing resilience over victimhood will leave you inspired. She's not just rebuilding, she's redefining what is possible. And I'm so excited to have you with me today, Stephenie.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
It's such an honor to have you with us. And thank you for your time. Now, your story is extraordinary, not just because of what you've been through, but because of the way you've chosen to rise. It's so inspiring. So I thought if we start at the beginning, can you take us back to the trip where everything changed? How did a mosquito bite end up altering the entire trajectory of your life?
Well, Julie, I'm a big believer in synchronicity, and everything happens for a reason. And I was invited to Hive Africa and India after being invited to the Hive organization through someone on LinkedIn in 2019 who said, you just need to go. And on that, if that was where I was meant to be, I said yes. And I went to Hive in Silicon Valley. And in my pod, in my cohort group, there was both leaders from Africa and leaders from India. And when it came to giving your purpose statement, which is part of the Hive exercises, really getting clear on your purpose, mine was to impact 1 billion lives in support of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, but particularly on gender equality and ending domestic violence for women and girls. And of course, Africa and India have major problems with those two matters quite significantly. So after being a part of this pod, I was invited to attend these two conferences. They were back to back, 1 week after the other. And I said yes. So in September, I went first to Lagos, Nigeria, to speak at the Hive organization. But also at the time, I'm the founder of an app called WanderSafe. And WanderSafe is a free app that you can download to your phone. You can use it to signal your first responders, whoever that might be, your flatmate, your work employee, your boss, your boyfriend, your husband, your son, depending on your life situation, versus just the police. And to alert them that you're in trouble, be located instantly within 10 seconds and accurately located within 3 meters. So this app that we developed and we're distributing for free, my goal was to see it in every smartphone when you've got your phone, just like stocks in the weather. So this was my big mission, and reason I went to Africa and India was to save a whole bunch of lives and hit that impact goal. And I went to Lagos, and I had done my homework working in safety about what not to do, where not to go at night, not to get an Ubers, not to go to an ATM. And I certainly didn't see anyone in Lagos who looked like me. So knowing I was a highly visible target for robbery and any other potential bodily harm, physical harm, I made sure that I bubble wrapped myself and stayed in the conference hotel and only went upstairs and downstairs. But that said, on the last day, by an organization called Travel Massive here in Australia, I was invited to speak to 70 travel agents about WanderSafe. And so I went along, and after I spoke and told them about WanderSafe and how they could use it to improve the guest experience in their products, they asked me if I'd go outside and have photos with the delegates. And I stood outside, and you know what big group photos are like in conferences, the photographer shuffling this one and that one, and you stay on your mark and everyone surrounds you. And then, of course, giving interviews for about an hour and a half to the media. It was about 6 o'clock at night, and there was a pool of water behind me. And unbeknownst to me, I got 3 mosquito bites on my left ankle. I traveled on to India. I was at the Australian High Commission doing tech meetups for women, and of course, speaking at Hive. I came home from Australia on a Wednesday, and on Thursday, went to Boston on a trip that I won from the TAB, fantastically enough, to go to Fenway Park to see the Red Sox play the Orioles. Now, I'm not a big baseball fan, but it was, and the dates were inflexible, because the owners of the pub in Canberra, the Fenway House, had bought these tickets. So the dates were fixed and I had to go. So I literally got home, changed luggage, and then the next day went with my best friend to Boston on this girls' weekend, which turned out to be the weekend that my life would significantly be altered forever.
Oh my God.
But again, synchronicity of me getting to Hive and being there and then winning this trip and being in Boston. We were in the airport flying out back to Sydney on a Sunday. And my friend went to the bar to get some food. I was feverish and unwell, and I call it unwell. It was probably, I had traveled 40,000 kilometers in 2 weeks. I called it airplane flu. I never thought that I was traveling with humans' most apex predator, cerebral malaria, which had been transmitted to me by those mosquito bites on my ankle. So in that airport lounge in Boston Airport, I had a seizure. I was unconscious and ambulanced from the airport to Massachusetts General Hospital and quickly placed in ICU where my health was rapidly declining in a day.
Unbelievable. Like something that can happen to anyone on any date, get a mosquito bite, and then you contract cerebral malaria.
Yeah.
And you collapse in Boston.
Yeah. Well, there are 4 different kinds of malaria. I would later learn, of course, being involved with the Global Fund now. But cerebral malaria is the most fatal. And what it does, the parasite enters the body. Like the mosquito is the Uber Eats driver, except for your dinner. So it brings, the pathogen to dinner and puts it inside the human body. And then the parasite begins to multiply and make more of itself. So it was multiplying in my body in that gestation period, which is 2 weeks. So by the time it was detected with me in the airport, 8% of my blood's volume was parasitic, which of course the second 1-2 punch to malaria was severe septic shock because my organs couldn't process dirty blood. Wow. And it was just full of parasites. So liver failure, kidney failure, heart failure. I was just not in a good state. And Harvard doctors at that point were giving me less than a 2% chance of survival.
That is just incredible. And you spent 400 days in hospital.
Oh, no, we're at 552.
Oh, we're 552 now. Oh, yeah. My God.
I've had 2 major operations since August of last year and probably the biggest, and spent 60 nights just in the last, 8 months. And that's just hospital nights. That's not at-home recovery from major operations on my legs. People think, well, did you lose your legs because a mosquito bit you on your ankle? And the answer is no. I lost my legs and part of my right hand due to the drugs that saved my life because I needed artesunate, which was to kill the malaria. But then they had to give me drugs called vasopressors, which are adrenaline drugs. So when I was going to flatline, Harvard doctors told my family, there's only one thing we can do. We can give her 100% and force all the blood to her organs. And if we do this, though, we're going to bypass some things that are the furthest away from these vitals, which would be your extremities, like your fingers and your toes. So when they were shoving all the blood to keep me alive in those critical moments, my feet and my hands were robbed of blood. And when I woke up about October 11th, my feet were turning black and my fingertips were turning black. And no one really wanted to tell me much about what the future would hold. They didn't want to tell me what I'd been through, but they also didn't want to tell me we don't. And because I had such a low survival chance that there wasn't, kind of a benchmark on, okay, it's going to take you this long and you're going to need this, that, and the other thing. It's just like, you're lucky to be here and you'll figure it out. And my family, when they made that decision to give me those drugs, was fully informed that this would be a potential outcome. So they knew it, but nobody wanted to tell me when I woke up. So I was met with tears of joy and trepidation.
Oh God, I can't even imagine what that whole situation would have been like. But for you, you're in a coma, you've been in hospital for so many days. I've watched your TEDx and as you say, your muscles just fall off you. And then you had so many operations, but your feet couldn't be saved. No. What is that moment of reckoning like? What goes through your mind at that moment?
Well, I was really lucky. I mean, I used to be married to a surgeon, and through him met another doctor, Gordon Slater, who's an orthopod in Sydney. And he took one look at my feet and he said, "I'm not sure if I can save them, but I'm willing to go down the path with you." And so, and this was during COVID, mind you, as well. So I was stuck in hospital going and having surgery almost every 10 days. They would take me back. They took skin grafts off my arms, off my bottom, and were trying to get the skin that was left on my feet to heal and close because I lost all 10 of my toes. I lost my heel cap. So the little bit of foot that was left between the heel and the toes, like the ball of the foot, was really all that was left. But I wanted and willed that my body would heal itself.
Yeah.
And when we got all but, and with heel caps, you would imagine like putting your hand under your heel, that entire part of my heel was taken off. The bones were dead from the drugs that saved me. And your body, when it gets a foreign body like a splinter or a dead bone, doesn't want to close around it and heal. It wants to get rid of it. So nature was fighting us and we were trying to fight nature. But in the end, it was a conscious decision with my surgeon to get to as far as we could go and just say, this isn't going to work. And it was a very sad, decision. And he said, you have a couple of different choices. You can go down a more invasive surgery where you put your midsection on your foot, stay in bed for 4 more months, revascularize it, 20-hour surgery, but it might not work. And the might not, after so long in hospital, was not a punt for me that I wanted to take. And as I said, synchronicity is a funny thing in my story. But in 2015, I was at TEDx in Sydney and heard an orthopedic surgeon who does robotics talk about saving lives and giving amputees the ability to walk again. And when I got into the NDIS and they said, what do you want? And I said, I want to walk again. They said, okay. And who can do this? And it turned out that I remembered hearing this TED Talk and meeting this doctor. So I emailed him and I said, this is my story. Can you help me? And within 10 minutes of sending the email, his office called and said, he'll see you next Wednesday. And I had an appointment with him. Yeah. So then I went in to see him the next week and he took one look at my feet and said, I can't save them, but if you give them to me, I will have you upstanding in 2 weeks. And I had been in a wheelchair for 2 years, and that was very difficult with being a single mom during COVID in a wheelchair, never having been disabled previously. So the idea of getting my legs back and being able to ambulate on my own and have my independence. When I was 21, I went and became Australia's first bilateral above ankle osseointegrated female amputee. So there was no one to ask what was it going to be like or what, life was like on the other side. But I just knew I wanted my independence. I needed to walk again and I wanted my life back. And I made that very permanent and irreversible decision.
That is just a phenomenal story. So your mindset, how do you protect your mindset going through such an enormous health crisis and then making that choice to go, no, you know what, I'm choosing to walk again in a new way? How do you protect?
Well, I mean, it was, I had to just lean into it versus, get stuck in the how come in the why. And of course I had my moments, that were very dark. Why me? Being a single mom. My son said something very powerful to me in hospital. He was there when I woke up from the coma. He'd been brought over from Australia. And I was in tears saying to him, I don't know how I'm going to take care of you. I don't know what life is going to be like from here. I can't scratch my nose, more or less make you lunch. And he said to me, Mom, life is 10% what you're given and 90% what you do with it. And if that's how he saw life, then that was my call to action as to how I would view what would be my next, what would be my next steps, I guess you could say, proverbially, literally and figuratively. But it wasn't easy. When I was in hospital every day, and this sounds so naff, but I would write in the morning 36 affirmations in a notebook of I am statements. And those were all the things that I knew and believed I was before I became only the number, Julie, on my
Yeah.
wristband in the hospital. And before going from being a CEO and a founder and a this and that and a socialite according to Sydney newspapers and all of this, all this, I was reduced. I wore the same dress every single
Yeah.
day. It was a pale blue backless gown. There was no variety. There was no distractions. And in that space of becoming distraction free, I became really clear internally, and I had to get concise on self-love. And that was a really big part of my very initial healing aspect of mindset. If I didn't love me enough to get out of that bed, I couldn't go save a billion lives.
I absolutely love that. And I really resonate with it. And the title of your TEDx talk is How I Met My Best Friend. And you shared how your mindset shifted to save me first, put your oxygen mask on. So what did that shift, look like in real terms for you? How did you become your best friend? I love it.
Well, I mean, again, when you don't have things to worry about like dinner and grocery shopping and the kids' schedule or dates or friend catch-ups, or I had no distraction except for my pain, except for my limitations, except for the four walls that were around me, the nurses who would come and see me, the prognosis, the whispering of doctors that wouldn't tell me straight up what life was. So in a distraction free environment. And sometimes people go to mountain retreats for meditation to get that. Well, I hope that no one has to go to the gates of hell where I was, because I was the only one there at that time to have to get really confronted with forgiving myself, of all of the, missteps I took when I didn't stand up for myself, when I didn't love her, the best friend, myself, and go and step through each one of those instances and heal and forgive, heal and forgive. And I had nothing but time.
Wow.
Had nothing but time. So, and that was, I think, the cathartic moment of that experience was having to go back in time and see things almost as an external observer, but very much a key player. So, in speaking of myself in the third person as she, I saw where I had let myself down. But in order to be able to forgive and get strong, I had to go and reconcile that. And that gave me the mindset, I think, to save me. Because
No.
nobody was going to do it for me. No doctor. I could be told what I had to do. A physio could say you should do this and do that and exercise that. But if I
Yeah.
wasn't doing the work, I wasn't going to get out of that bed.
Yeah. I remember when I first got my cancer diagnosis, and I was sort of going down the track of being, the patient. I didn't like where I was heading, and I said to myself, I'm not going to be defined by this diagnosis. I am going to anchor back to who I am. And that sounds to me exactly what you chose. It's like, I'm not going to be defined by this situation. I'm going to be the best version of myself that I can be.
Well, and in becoming, getting
Yeah.
real with disability has been, something all unto its own, not to mention being an amputee, because there's all kinds of, psychological PTSD that goes with losing limbs, from phantom limb pain to, the way you ambulate, getting used to doing things, accepting help from others. That was a huge like growth moment for me, because I was so independent, and all of a sudden now I needed people. I couldn't in the supermarket reach up to the cereal aisle and get, the Wheaties.
Yeah.
Like, I had first world problems and I'd have to learn how to accept help, which was also something that I hadn't done before. But, in every single day in hospital, I would once write my affirmations, say my prayers, and then get cleaned up. Cleaned up meaning a sponge bath or whatever that was. But I also put on a full face of makeup every single day. And then it was COVID. No one was coming to visit, like literally just the nurses. But I did it to normalize the things that I could control
Yeah.
were the things that I could do for myself. And that, we call that now self-care. It's got a term, but for me, it was about normalizing my situation and also doing something that I
Yeah.
could look in the mirror and feel like me, despite the fact that I was lying in a bed and couldn't get up and didn't get to go outside for 6 months and didn't hear a bird or feel the wind on my face.
Yeah.
It was like jail, but worse, because at least they get to go outside for an hour a day. The nurses weren't taking me out
Yeah.
for a little fresh air. So, I remember the newness of everything, which also really leaned
Yes.
into the gratitude that I
Yes.
had.
When we spoke, you mentioned that, like that real mindset of gratitude for your life.
Even the first time I went outside and felt the sun on my face after being in the hospital for so long, I was like a child. Like the first time I had sushi and pizza, like everything felt like living for the first time. Although, it's the second time. And for me now, I really feel like every day that I have is a day like basketball, like in overtime. When the doctor said she's going to die in 5 minutes or less, and 3 times I came back, and the final time I woke up, that keeps me grateful
Yeah.
every single day. On my worst day, it's still my best day because I'm getting to be in that
Yeah.
human experience for a little bit
Unbelievable.
longer.
So fast forwarding to you became the first Australian female para fencer to compete internationally in decades
Yes.
and Paralympic torchbearer. And that's the first since 1968. Am I correct?
Well, there's some
Right.
complications around being a Paralympian, but as far as being a para athlete, I was the first woman to do it for Australia since 1968 and bring the Australian flag back to where it hadn't hung in decades and even older than I am. So that was a significant thing. Fencing found me really, and I had been in the hospital for so long, and I got an NDIS newsletter with one line in it that said New South Wales Fencing is looking to start a pair fencing social program. Email this coach. And I did. And I went in and I thought fencing looks cool. The outfits look cool. And maybe I might also learn how to socialize within a community of disabled
Yeah.
people because no one I knew was disabled. So, and helping me to come to terms with my own body and my own abilities. And I don't call them disabilities, but new abilities to do something versus try to snowboard with no feet. Try that. I don't recommend it. But, rather than relearning something that I loved, taking up something brand new gave me something to focus on outside myself and set a new goal. And my coach, after 3 lessons, said, "You're really good at this. Would you consider representing your country?" And I went, game on. And I don't think she really thought I would take it as far as I did to the run up to the Paralympics and to be the Australian entry for the wild card, the bipartite, which on complications wound up going to Venezuela at the very last minute. But, I had worked for that spot for 14 months and it was gut wrenching to put the work in, but we're very much focused on
Yes,
opportunities.
absolutely. I love how it found you. I was so curious as to how you got into fencing. So thank you for sharing that.
The NDIS newsletter, but I can just picture it. Somebody in Brisbane who's up there now planning the Paralympics was looking at the checklist going, okay, wheelchair basketball, we have track and field, we have swimming, we have blah, 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 get down to all the categories and go, oh no, we don't have any wheelchair fencers. Somebody go start a program. And because New South Wales is the biggest fencing program, it naturally landed in my coach's lap. And she took a keen interest, her name's Alex Andre, in creating the program. So she and I together took it to a level that we are internationally recognized. There are new and young people in the program who I believe in 2032 will medal because I was the cornerstone in making that happen for them. So I will die with that legacy of being the first since 1968, but also to bring that sport back into Australian.
Absolutely. That's such a fantastic legacy to leave. So you've been through so much, Stephenie, and before you got your illness, like, and now entrepreneur, speaker, survivor, athlete, like, my goodness, what is next for Stephenie? Like, what's lighting you up and pulling you forward now?
Well, I committed this year in gratitude to the Global Fund because it's a replenishment year and they raise 65% of all monies for HIV, TB, and malaria and fund programs in 120 countries. So that aligns really well with my impact goal because they have very long arms and tentacles into a lot of programs. But that's taken me to some wonderful opportunities to network with the likes of David Beckham from Malaria No More in the UK and have lunch with Chelsea Clinton and work with Dr. Charles from the R&B Partnership. So really giving my time and my voice to eradicating malaria because it is eradicatable. A child dies every minute under the age of 5 from malaria. And we don't hear about it. We don't read about it because the numbers aren't sexy and those demographics don't light anyone up. But I know what it's like to be a mother, and I can't imagine losing my son in those early years and the impact that has on communities. So, when the Global Fund approached me and said, will you be our change maker? Will you be our ambassador? Will you be the voice for the voiceless? It was very easy for me to say yes. And of course, because the political climate in such of the Global Fund's donor countries has been so volatile, with new presidents coming in all over the place, and whether they're sympathetic to the World Health Organization and other, mediums that work together on these big global problems with health. And that's also one of the SDGs is like the equal access to healthcare. So I'm still on my path, just working a little bit differently. I'm very blessed to be invited to speak to corporate events and audiences and share my story, to be a resilience expert, to teach the things I learned going through my journey to professional organizations and to inspire other people to live through challenges is a wonderful blessing. I'm still on my own road to recovery. I have a hip replacement surgery on the cards for me, 8 weeks of recovery with that. And Julie, I'll always be a work in progress. So I can only do what my body allows when it allows me to do it, which makes me about the only person who will hire me is me full time because I have the demands of what it takes to just keep me functioning and healthy. But I love parafencing. I love working with the Global Fund. I have, written some books that I hope will see the light of day and come to publication because I think those will be of significant, inspiration and reach many. And that's my hope is that, I have breadth in me to hit that billion life impact goal while I can. So, every day's an overtime, but that will run out at some point. But until then, I make a joke and say that death has to be faster than me, find me, and be a better fencer.
I lied. You've done it before and you do it again. So, Stephenie, you are an absolute powerhouse. When I met you in Sydney, you were like magnetic, and it was, I have to speak to this woman, and you're just incredible. So thank you for sharing, snippets of your story with our listeners today. And I'll be sharing your TEDx link and links in terms of how people can get in touch with you on the show notes. And I'm so honored that you have given up your time to be with us today. And thank you so much for being you and for having such an enormous vision to impact so many people.
Well, thank you. And, people can follow me on LinkedIn and, of course, on Instagram at Digital Goddess and follow my journey through, navigating disability and business and life after trauma. And that would be a wonderful thing. There's some great footage on the internet from the ABC that came to film us fencing and things like that. So people get interested in also in parafencing for people with disabilities. It's a wonderful sport. You can start at any age. I started at 52. So if it doesn't have an age limit on it on when you can actually take it up, and it's really, really fun.
Thank you so much, Stephenie.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me.